scary stories.
Every night, I share a story that most people wouldn't dare to tell. If you're listening, you're already one of us. And if you haven't subscribed yet, that's okay. But just know, every new subscriber brings me one step closer to building a safe place for the one person I love most, my mother. So if you enjoy these haunted tales, press that button, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be the reason the next story finds a happier ending. I always thought horror was best left for screens or stories, that it couldn't touch you if you didn't believe. But belief, that's a funny thing. Sometimes it doesn't matter whether you believe in it. Sometimes it believes in you. It all began with a film project. I was just another media studies major at Halridge University, drowning in deadlines and cheap coffee. Lila Morgan and I were paired randomly for a final year assignment, a short documentary exploring untold local history. Sounded harmless. Lila was different. She wasn't just passionate, she was obsessed with the supernatural, urban legends, paranormal phenomena, haunted places. She had this spark in her eyes when she talked about curses and old rituals, the kind of spark you want to follow, even if it takes you somewhere dark. And God, did it ever. We chose the abandoned Wexley Library as our subject. The place had been sealed off since the 1980s after a fire gutted the East Wing. But the basement, rumored to house the university's forbidden archives, still stood untouched. We pulled some strings, got permission from a lazy admin who didn't really care, and brought our gear. 2 DSLR cameras, a Zoom recorder, night lights, and a crowbar, just in case the doors gave us trouble. The air was wrong the second we stepped inside. Dust floated like ash in the beam of our lights. The stairs creaked under our weight. It smelled of old paper, mold, and something else. Like something rotting behind the walls. Lila grinned. "This is perfect," she whispered, holding her camera up. "Can you feel it, Ethan? It's like the place is waiting." I laughed nervously. Yeah, probably for an exorcist. We explored for hours. Most of it was junk, scorched books, broken shelves, scattered pages. But in the back, behind a metal filing cabinet, Lila found it. An old wooden chest, carved with symbols neither of us recognized, locked with rusted iron. I hesitated, but she was already kneeling beside it, fingers tracing the carvings. "It's not Latin," she murmured. "Maybe Enochian, or some occult dialect." Before I could ask what that meant, she snapped the lock with the crowbar. Inside was a book, thick, black leather, stained and pulsing with age. The cover had no title, just a symbol, a circle with jagged lines inside it, like something scratched by a shaking hand. I didn't want to touch it, but Lila picked it up like it was a holy relic. "This is it," she whispered. "This is our story." That night, while reviewing the footage, we noticed something off. In a single frame, just one, behind us in the far corner of the archive, there was a figure. Tall, thin, watching. But we hadn't seen anyone. No footsteps, no shadows. The next frame, empty. I wanted to delete it. Lila wanted to enhance it. "We need to go back," she said. "There's more there. I know it." I should have said no. That night, I dreamed of the book. It sat on a pedestal, in the library basement. Pages turning on their own, whispers circling me. Faint at first, then rising into an unbearable cacophony. Then came the voice, a dry whisper in my ear. "Keep reading." I woke up gasping. My window was open, though. I knew I'd shut it, on my desk. The book sat wide open. I never brought it home. We took a scanned page from the book to Professor Rourke, a retired linguist who specialized in ancient texts and symbols. He took one look and went pale. This is not meant to be read," he said quietly. "Why?" Lila asked. "What language is it?" "It's a ciphered derivative of Narcotic, a pre-human script mentioned in arcane lore. It's not just a language, it's a door. You don't read it, it reads you." We laughed at first, thought he was being dramatic. Then he kicked us out of his house and told us never to return. The next footage we shot wouldn't save. Corrupted files, screeches over our audio, faces blurred in motion, even when we weren't moving. In one shot, Lila is staring into the camera, but her reflection in the mirror behind her smiles before she does. In the apartment I shared with 2 roommates, things started to shift, small at first. My desk chair spun on its own. My phone alarm rang at 3:03 a.m., even though it wasn't set. One night, I found the word, "look," scratched into the inside of my bathroom mirror. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. Lila started acting strange. She stopped sleeping. Her eyes were sunken, but she was energized, obsessed with the book. She claimed it was showing her things, visions, maps, names. She told me the entity in the book was called the Hollow One, that it was older than death. I asked her how she knew. She didn't answer. One night, I dreamed of a tunnel, deep, stone-lined, and endless. At the far end stood Lila. She was smiling, but her mouth was too wide. Behind her, a tall, faceless figure reached forward, pressing fingers into her shoulders. I woke up screaming. Blood dripped from my nose. There were wet footprints leading from the doorway to my bed. I lived on the 3rd floor. The final page we translated from the book that week had a phrase repeated 3 times. "Belief is the lock, fear is the key, and you have already turned it." I didn't know what that meant then, but I would. And I'd give anything to forget. It's not in the book anymore. It's in us. Ethan Carter, personal recording. Day 14, I stopped going to class. How could I pretend to care about editing theory or cinematography when I couldn't even sleep without dreaming of a mouth whispering in reverse, or hands clawing the insides of my skull? Something was happening to us, and it all started when we opened that goddamn book. Lila's apartment was a wreck. When I visited, every wall was covered in taped pages, symbols, diagrams, maps of the university campus with spots marked in red ink. Some of the sketches looked like architecture. Others were people, but distorted, faceless, bent backward. In the center of the chaos sat Lila, staring blankly at a candle flame, the book open beside her. "Lila, what are these?" I asked gently. "I'm not drawing them," she said without looking at me. "They're drawing through me." We tried to take another page to someone else, Dr. Konrad Lemsky, a fringe academic who dabbled in forbidden languages, banned texts. He was more intrigued than terrified, unlike Rourke. We left him a scanned page and scheduled a follow-up meeting. He never showed up. Later that week, we heard he'd gouged out his own eyes in his office and was now under psychiatric hold. His last note, written on the back of our scan, just said, "It speaks with light. Do not record it. Do not let it see you seeing it." We checked the footage we'd recorded over the last few days. Most were distorted or blank, but in one of the uncorrupted segments, something new appeared. During a late-night shot in my dorm, while I was adjusting the tripod, the video flickered, and for one frame, I wasn't alone. Behind me, reflected in the window, was a tall, shadowy figure with elongated limbs, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, only on the video. We froze the frame, zoomed in. The shadow's mouth was open. Inside, instead of teeth, were fingers. At first, it was whispers. By week 2, the whispers had words. At night, I'd hear voices crawling from the corners of my ceiling. The hollow must be filled. Dig beneath. Dig within. You are the lens. Let it see. I stopped responding. That only made it worse. They didn't like silence. I woke one night standing outside my building in nothing but my boxers. My feet were muddy. My arms scraped, raw. In my hand was a torn page from the book. I don't know how I got it. On my back, drawn in permanent marker, was the same circle symbol, the one from the cover. Lila said I'd come to her apartment the night before, eyes glassy, speaking in a language she didn't recognize. I had no memory of it. The book gave it a name, written in ink darker than black. A name appeared on a previously blank page after we finished filming at a new location, the old bell tower, near campus. The page said, "It is the Hollow One. It walks with echoes. It is not summoned. It is remembered." Lila believed it was tied to something beneath the campus, that the book wasn't a source, it was a map, a guide, a key. I just wanted to burn it. We went back to the bell tower for more footage, only this time we brought our friend Nathan, a film geek. Skeptical, logical, said we were just feeding our paranoia. Halfway through shooting, the wind stopped. Literally, no sound, not even the distant hum of traffic. Just stillness. Nathan wandered up the tower steps. We lost sight of him. We called his name. 30 minutes. Later he walked down, quiet, pale, holding something in his hands. It was a bone, too big for a bird, too small for a deer, too human. He didn't say where he found it, just stared at Lila and said, "It knows who opened the door. We got an email from Rourke. A cryptic message. I was wrong to send you away." I heard the book again. "It's waking up. Come quickly. But do not come after dark." We rushed to his house. But we were too late. He was dead. The police said suicide. Slashed throat. But his blood had been used to write on the walls. They're not whispers. They're calling back. On the floor beside him, scorched into the wood, was the symbol again. That night, Lila sent me a voice memo at 3:11 a.m. She was whispering. The audio glitched, echoed, but I could make out her words. "Ethan, I see them now. In the mirrors, in the spaces between things. I think the book chose us. It needed eyes. That's what we are. Eyes for it to look through." Then a pause, and one final whisper. "Don't look into the lens. I haven't slept in days. When I blink too long, I see it. Standing at the edge of my bed, watching with finger teeth. Its mouth moving, but no sound. It speaks through silence now. I don't know what we woke up, but I'm starting to think it never went to sleep at all." Classes didn't matter anymore. Friends stopped replying. My inbox was flooded with unread emails from professors and a few concerned family members, but I ignored them. What would I even say? "Hi, I've been translating a cursed book that might be a doorway to a forgotten God who whispers to me through camera lenses and dreams. By the way, I might be sleepwalking into tunnels that don't exist on any map." Yeah. Sure. Lila and I barely spoke now, but when we did, it was only about it. Lila called me over one night. She looked different. Thinner, sunken eyes, skin like wax. But she was vibrating with excitement. "It's under us," she said, pointing to the book. I figured it out. The text wasn't just words, it's coordinates, locations. There's something beneath the university, Ethan. Like catacombs. No, older. Pre-foundation. I wanted to say it was nonsense, but I'd seen too much. She laid out floor plans she'd found in some forgotten records room, an old version of Halridge's campus. There were sealed-off sub-basements, chambers never labeled. "We're going down there," she said. And somehow, I agreed. We waited until 2 a.m. and entered through the old steam access shaft behind the student gym. It wasn't even locked, just rusted shut. What lay beneath the school wasn't just a maintenance area. We found crumbling stairs that descended far deeper than they should have. At some point, the walls stopped being brick and started being stone. Ancient stone, covered in carvings like the ones in the book. Spirals. Eyes. Teeth. We turned on the cameras. The audio glitched immediately. I don't know how far we went down. Maybe 100 feet. Maybe more. The air grew colder. Not the normal cold of underground. This was wet. Hollow. As if something was inhaling all around us. Then we heard the chant. Not in a language we knew, but in rhythm. From somewhere deeper in the dark. Lila gripped my arm. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded. And the chant stopped. Something else took its place. Footsteps, but not ours. We found what looked like a ritual chamber. A circular room, walls lined with bones stacked into patterns. In the center, a raised stone altar, and an old, rusted camera pointed toward it. A plaque beside the camera had been etched with a single line. "The lens is the key. Let it look, and it shall awaken." That's when our camera flickered, and the live screen showed us something we couldn't see with our eyes. The room wasn't empty. A figure stood behind the altar. Tall, head bent, arms stretching past its knees. On screen, it moved closer. But, in real life, we saw nothing. Then it looked directly into the lens, and the screen went black. We ran. Something was chasing us. We felt it more than heard it. But every shadow behind us seemed deeper, wider, alive. As we climbed back up, I swear I heard whispering in my ear, just as we reached the surface. "You have seen the door. Now you must open it." The next day, the university went into panic mode. A sophomore named Avery Marlowe had gone missing. Last seen near the gym around 2 a.m. I knew exactly where she'd gone, or where she'd been taken. The worst part? She showed up in our footage, in one frame, just one. You could see her standing in the shadows of the tunnel behind us, smiling. Eyes pure black. She started talking in her sleep. Not words, growls, cackles. Once I recorded her whispering the same phrase, "The vessel bleeds, the door sees." Her sketches became more violent. She drew us, me, her, even Nathan, with our faces ripped off, eyes replaced with spirals. I asked if she was okay. She laughed. "Don't you feel it, Ethan? It's already inside us. There's no going back." I tried to walk away, deleted the footage, burned my notes, threw the book into the river. But that night, I woke up with it beside me in bed, dry, warm, and humming like a breathing thing. My phone had recorded a voice memo by itself. "Nice try. Try again." We went to one last location, a forgotten storage hall under the west dorms. Inside, we found something that stopped me cold. A room entirely made of mirrors. Every angle reflected us. Every camera frame glitched. But in each reflection, we saw something different. Lila smiled in hers. But in the mirror, she was covered in blood. In mine, I was alone. No Lila beside me. Just me, and the hollow one, standing behind me. Smiling. Don't know what's real anymore. But the thing in the book, it's awake. And it's looking through me. She hadn't left her apartment in 2 days. I forced the door open. She was standing in the corner, facing the wall, whispering something over and over. Her nails scratching into the plaster, carving spirals, over and over and over. The walls were covered in black crayon symbols, layered atop each other like someone had drawn in a frenzy for hours. The book lay open on the floor beside a dozen burnt candles. "Lila?" I asked. She turned. She smiled, but it wasn't her smile. Her pupils weren't right. They weren't dilated. They were spiraling, like whirlpools sucking in light. "I saw it, Ethan," she said, voice low and sing-song. "I saw what's behind the mirrors." She tilted her head slowly, inhumanly, like something testing how far a neck could turn. "Did you know it doesn't blink?" she whispered. "It never blinks." I backed away, heart hammering. Then she blinked, and her expression returned. "Ethan?" she asked weakly. "What's happening to me?" I didn't have the courage to answer. It started whispering directly into my thoughts. Not voices I could hear, voices I could feel. Like fingers trailing across the inside of my brain. I'd wake up with my hands covered in ink. Symbols drawn across my skin. Pages filled with writing I didn't remember composing. Once, I found a phrase scribbled over in my notebook. "You are the eye. You are the gate. You are the vessel." I stopped sleeping. I started seeing things move in the corners. I woke up in the university library's restricted section, covered in sweat. My phone battery dead, my hands trembling. I had no memory of how I got there. But the worst part? My voice recorder had captured audio while I was unconscious. Me, chanting in that unknown language, and something else breathing beside me. Her skin started turning gray, like paper soaked in ash. Her voice changed tone randomly, sometimes childlike, sometimes deep and raspy. Once she levitated, just a few inches off the floor. She didn't remember it afterward. I tried to convince her to leave the city, go to her family, but she laughed. There is no me anymore. There's only we. She no longer slept. Nathan visited again. He was acting weird, smiling too much, sweating but claiming to be cold. When I asked if he remembered what happened at the bell tower, he said, "I saw God." I asked what he looked like. He whispered, "Hungry." Then he showed me something he'd carved into his stomach. A spiral, deep, bleeding. And he said, "The more we suffer, the more it sees." I haven't seen him since. Reality began to break. Mirrors stopped showing my reflection. Lights flickered when I entered rooms. Cameras no longer recorded what I saw, only static or frames of me screaming when I wasn't. Once, I received a call. From my own number, I answered. My voice whispered back, "You're already dead." Then it laughed. My laugh. Lila told me it was almost time. Time to complete the circuit. The book revealed a final location, an underground cistern chamber, sealed by steel doors beneath the old chemistry hall. She said that was where the lens opens. We weren't going to film anymore. We were going to feed. I asked, "Feed what?" She touched her chest, smiled, and said, "Me." Outside, life went on. Students drank coffee. Professors lectured. Couples held hands. But to me, it all looked fake. Like puppets reenacting a forgotten script. I couldn't relate anymore. I couldn't connect. The book had rewritten me. I was part of its story now. And I knew how stories ended. I watched Lila sleep now. Her limbs twitching, whispering in reverse. I don't think she's human anymore. Maybe neither am I. The door is almost open, and I don't know if we're opening it for something else, or for what's already inside us. Lila no longer blinked. Not once in 4 days. Her body moved mechanically. Skin stretched too tightly over her bones, and her voice had stopped sounding like hers. It echoed, as if more than one mouth spoke behind the words. She took me to the old chemistry building at 3:33 a.m., the time the book called The Veins Hour. The door beneath the lab had no handle, only symbols, etched in spirals, jagged, eye shapes, and names we couldn't pronounce. She pressed her hand to it. It opened. We descended. The air was thick, heavy, tasting like copper and damp ashes. Stone steps spiraled downward, more than 200 of them. Each wall was covered in carvings, not just ancient symbols, people, names, dates. Some scratched in with desperate fingernails. It wasn't just a ritual site. It was a graveyard. We entered a colossal underground chamber, half dome, half reflective water. In the center stood an altar of bone, and around it, hundreds of old tripods, broken cameras and microphones, all aimed at the altar. Lila said, "They tried to record the moment it woke up, but it doesn't let you watch. It watches you." I asked what the ritual required. She said, "Witnessing." And then she pulled out a dagger. She handed me the dagger. "You have to film me, Ethan. Don't look away. It only opens when someone watches." She climbed onto the altar and began carving symbols into her own chest. Slowly, without screaming. Smiling, blood poured down her ribs. Her voice changed again. She started chanting, fluent in the book's language now. The water around the altar began to ripple, as if something massive were swimming just below the surface. I kept filming, even when the camera glitched, even when she levitated, even when her skin began to tear, unfolding like paper, revealing eyes underneath. Everything went black, but not like the lights went out, like my mind went dark. My thoughts stopped. My memories fell silent. And in that void, something opened, a mouth the size of the sky, a voice deeper than bones, and it entered me. Not just in my mind, but into my blood, my bones, my eyes. I saw everything, and nothing, and him, the Hollow One. Not a god, not a demon, not a creature, just an idea, the absence of all things, the hunger behind the world. When I came to, Lila was gone. Only her blood remained, floating across the surface of the cistern like an oil slick. The camera was broken. My hands were stained black. I looked at the footage. There was nothing, just static, for 7 hours. But the audio, it whispered one sentence on a loop. "He sees you now. He sees you always." When I returned to campus, the world had changed. Slightly, subtly. The moon never moved from one position in the sky. People blinked out of sync. Shadows didn't align with bodies. Passed by a mirror and didn't have a reflection, but something behind me did. They couldn't see it, but I could. He followed me, smiling. Nathan went missing first, then 5 more students. A professor was found in the faculty lounge, eyes carved. Out, spirals burned into his cheeks. The university denied everything, blamed a gas leak. But I knew. It had begun feeding. Through me. I tried to call a priest. He didn't make it inside, just stood at the gates, weeping, then walked into traffic and vanished. A psychic refused to even speak to me after seeing the spiral. I drew on paper. "It's not from Earth," she whispered, "and neither are you anymore." She was right. I felt it every time I blinked, because every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. It started to rain black ink. No one else noticed. They walked through it like it was air, but I tasted it. Thick, cold, bitter. It stained my skin with spirals no soap could wash away. I went back to the library archives, desperate to learn where the book had come from. Buried behind false walls, I found what the university had hidden. Sealed file, marked Project Looking Glass, 1939. Status, terminated warning, Class 7. Phenomenon inside, photos, redacted files, a single sentence scrawled in blood-red ink. Do not read it aloud. Do not look directly at the lens. Do not film the spiral. But we had done all three. The school wasn't just a university. It was a lighthouse, built on the exact crossing point between the waking world and the hollow plane. What ancient texts called the reflection that eats. Every decade, a pair of students would uncover the book. Every time, they'd vanish. The administration knew. They covered it up. They needed it to happen. Because the university was founded by a group of occult scholars in 1811 to feed the hollow. We weren't victims, we were offerings. I saw surveillance footage from 1954. A man who looked like me. Same face, same hair, same notebook. Screaming in the chemistry basement, holding the same book. Then another clip from 1976, another Ethan. Same story. Again in 1997, different Lila. Same pattern. I vomited. I screamed. I clawed at my face. I had always been here. We weren't the first. We weren't even real. We were copies. Fragments of an old ritual replaying over and over. Until the hollow one is strong enough to come through. She came back, but not as Lila. She was smiling, her mouth split too wide. Eyes glowing with spirals. "Ethan," she whispered. "You've been such a good narrator." She pulled out the camera. "You're almost done." She filmed me as I wept and said, "The Hollow One loves your voice. He thinks it's soothing." Time stopped functioning. Day never returned. The sky turned gray. Students froze in mid-motion, eyes wide, teeth chattering, lips whispering. "Don't blink." Buildings melted into bone and stone. The university's bell rang 13 times, then exploded, and the spiral opened in the sky. Black hole, but not sucking in, pouring out. It wasn't a creature. It was a concept, a being made of memory and hunger. It didn't eat bodies. It ate stories, identities, belief. And once it consumed enough, it could rewrite reality. I watched as professors forgot their names. Students stared into mirrors and screamed, realizing the reflections were now watching them. Lila levitated over the ruins, laughing in tongues no god would dare understand. The Hollow One didn't speak. It made you feel worthless, imaginary, erased. I recorded one last entry. I don't know if anyone will ever hear this, because by the time you do, I might not exist anymore. But if you find this story, if you hear my voice, don't finish reading it. Every word you read brings him closer. Every sentence feeds him. This story isn't mine anymore. It's his. And you're reading it now, aren't you? He sees you. I burn the book. I set fire to the room. But the spiral forms in the smoke. It's in my thoughts. It's behind your screen now. I don't sleep much anymore. Not since Liam died. It's not just grief. It's something else. Like something broke inside my brain. Something deep that used to keep the nightmares in and the waking world out. Now, I'm always halfway in both. Dylan speaks into the lens of his handheld camera, setting up the context for his next exploration video. He's parked on a muddy back road, his windshield misted with light drizzle. His voice is calm, monotone. "Hey explorers, Dylan here. Today we're heading to one of the most infamous unspoken places in the Appalachian backwoods. St. Elma's Church. Locals call it the Whispering Chapel, but most pretend it doesn't exist. He explains that it was shut down in the 1930s after strange disappearances, but online forums claim it still reacts to people, especially those who bring emotional trauma with them. That last part he doesn't say aloud. He glances at a sealed container in the passenger seat. Gotta make a delivery. He doesn't explain what it is. Dylan sets off on foot. The dirt path is washed out from rain. His boots squelch through mud as trees thicken. Nature feels too quiet. There are no birds. Even the insects seem to avoid the path. We're about 3 miles from the church now, I think. No GPS, no signal, just a good old-fashioned hike into haunted territory. As he walks, he starts talking to the camera more nervously, repeating himself, muttering things like, "No big deal, just trees, just fog, just weird fog." He keeps checking over his shoulder. Once he thinks he sees something, movement, but when he zooms the camera in, it's nothing but trees. He reaches a clearing. There it stands, St. Elma's, a stone church, crumbling under time. Vines have devoured half the structure. The iron gate creaks open like it expected him. Inside, the pews are mostly dust, cobwebs. The roof is half collapsed. A once grand stained glass window has shattered into colored fragments across the floor. There's a smell, Dylan whispers. Like iron and flowers. He explores cautiously. Every creak sounds like someone stepping behind him. When he turns, nothing. The altar is still intact, but it's wrong. It's stained with something dark, faded. Blood? On the wall behind it is a faded symbol. A spiral. That's not Christian. Dylan's breathing becomes shallow. He steps back and knocks over a broken candlestick. It echoes like thunder. That night, back at his tent outside the church, Dylan reviews his footage. He freezes the video. In the shot of the altar, something is there. A figure, just barely visible, transparent, standing behind him. But he was alone. He knows he was alone. Then he checks the audio. Right when he whispered about the smell, he hears a voice whisper back. "You've come to deliver him." He rewinds, listens again. Nothing. That night, he dreams of Liam, his brother. But Liam's mouth is stitched shut. He keeps pointing behind Dylan, sobbing. Dylan wakes up screaming. His camera is still recording. Before ending the night, he decides to take one more shot of the altar. A close-up. As he films it, the spiral symbol on the wall looks fresh, wet. He puts his hand to it. It's warm. He yanks his hand back. "We'll pick up again in the morning," he whispers to the camera. "If I'm still here." The morning light filters through the heavy fog, casting a dull, gray hue over the churchyard. Dylan blinks as he stirs awake, the remnants of his nightmare still clinging to his mind. He rubs his face and yawns, but there's a weariness in his bones that doesn't go away. "I'm still here," I mumble to myself, my voice hoarse. And something doesn't feel right. The church looms behind me, silent and waiting. I glance down at my camera, which is still recording. I'm not sure when I stopped it last night, but it's still running. The red light blinking steadily in the dim morning light. The footage from yesterday's exploration plays back in my mind, though I already know what I'll see. Nothing. Nothing. Real. But then there's the feeling. It's not gone. It's here, right under the surface of my thoughts. An itch that won't stop. That figure behind me on the altar. I didn't imagine it, did I? It wasn't the fog. I checked the footage again. Nothing but the eerie silence of the church. I decide to give it a rest and head to the church's back corner where I'd found a small shelf of dusty books yesterday. This place is old. old enough that it should have been torn down long ago. But I find myself drawn to it anyway. Something about its abandonment. The feeling that it's been here for longer than it should. I pull a few of the crumbling, leather-bound books from the shelf and leaf through them. Some of the pages are too fragile to turn. The scent of mildew makes my stomach turn. But then I stop. One book catches my attention. A history of St. Elma's Church. I flip it open. The page is stained and torn. The text is faded, almost illegible in places. But there are dates. Dates that draw me in. 1934. The disappearance of 12 children. 1942. Rebuilding of the church. Walls strengthened after the incident. 1953. Closure of St. Elma's. Building deemed unsafe for public use. Then, in bold, underlined text. 1963. A vessel must be delivered every 40 years. I feel a cold rush. That date. It's the same year my brother was born. I remember my mom talking about St. Elma's, telling me about the vessel and the church's history when I was younger. But I always thought it was just a story. This history doesn't make sense. And the more I read, the more my mind starts to spiral. There's mention of the priest who ran the church, a Father Kincaid, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. A small paragraph describes a ritual, but the ink is smudged, as if someone didn't want it to be read. The journal isn't hard to find. It's tucked between the books, bound in faded red leather. I open it cautiously, feeling the weight of its age. Father Kincaid's handwriting is sharp, but erratic. The children were never meant to be sacrificed. The vessel must be delivered as promised. But I fear he is angry. He is stirring beneath the church. I have seen his eyes in the walls. I read the words twice, and they don't make sense. A vessel? And what is he? What is the stirring Father Kincaid warned about? The longer I look at the pages, the more unsettling the words feel. There's something about them. Something primal that gnaws at me. A compulsion to understand. But it's almost as if the church itself is pressing against my mind, trying to hold me back. I stop reading when I feel something behind me. A coldness that crawls along my neck. Something watching. My skin prickles. I turn quickly. Nothing. Just the silence of the church. I shake my head, trying to push it aside. The air inside the building feels thicker than it should be. I don't know what it is, but I'm not imagining it. The walls feel alive. I step back, my breath shaky. Then I look at the journal again. The final entry reads, "He's here. I've heard his voice, but I must finish what I started. The vessel is required. The ritual must be completed. There is no other way. I will deliver the vessel." I pull myself together and try to focus. I've been here too long. It's all getting to me. The history, the whispers, the nightmarish sensation that won't leave. I grab the journal and head to the church's basement, hoping I can find something that makes sense. Maybe there's something hidden there. A clue that can end this madness. The stairs creak under my feet as I descend. The basement is damp, cold, and smells of old earth. And then I hear it. A voice. Faint, like a whisper on the edge of hearing. "You've come to deliver him." I freeze. I hear it again. My heart races. The voice isn't coming from my own mind. It's coming from somewhere else. Deep beneath the earth. Beneath the church. I stumble backward, the journal slipping from my hands. It lands with a soft thud on the stone floor. No, no, no. This isn't right. I look down, but the words in the journal don't make sense anymore. The pages are blank. All of them. The basement is getting colder. The darkness presses in on me, suffocating. I start backing away from the shadows, my breath coming out in short gasps. But then I feel it. The temperature drops even further, and I know that it's not just cold. Something is moving in the darkness. I turn. I run. I don't know what I expect to see. Maybe a shape, a shadow, something human. But I know I'm not alone anymore. I can feel it, a presence that I don't understand, but that I can't escape. Suddenly I crash into something. Hard. My camera falls from my hand and hits the floor, the lens cracking. But I can't stop. I have to run. I have to get out. I burst out of the basement, gasping for breath. The door slams behind me with an unnatural force. I don't remember running that fast. I don't remember even leaving the church. But I'm outside now. The air is fresh, but it doesn't feel like relief. The world feels wrong. The fog has thickened. The church stands there, silent and unmoving. But I swear I saw something in the windows. A figure watching me. I turn to leave, but before I hear it again. The whisper. The vessel is delivered. I couldn't shake the feeling that St. Elma's was calling me back. The church had dug itself into my mind, and no matter how hard I tried to forget about it, there it was, haunting every waking moment. My footsteps echo in the darkened alley as I approach the abandoned structure once again. The fog from last night hasn't lifted. It lingers in the air, thick and oppressive. Every breath I take feels heavier than the last. The smell of damp wood and mildew fills my nostrils as I reach the iron gates, which creak open with a groan, as if the church itself is welcoming me back. I hesitate. I don't want to go back inside. But a compulsion stronger than any fear pulls me in. The journal. The whispering voice. There's something I missed. I have to find out what it is before it's too late. I push the gate open and step onto the church grounds, each footfall slow and deliberate. The doors stand wide open, as if the church is waiting for me. The familiar sensation creeps over me like a cold hand on the back of my neck. I make my way to the front doors of the church. The interior feels different today. Darker somehow, like the air is heavier. The altar is in shadow, the floor beneath my boots cold and unwelcoming. The stairs to the bell tower are just ahead, hidden behind an overgrown archway. The sign of the ancient stone steps marks the path that leads upward to the very top of the church. I had tried to avoid this place the last time I was here, but the whisper has been following me. It's no longer just a voice I hear in the basement or in the corners of my mind. I can feel it pressing into my skull, urging me to go higher. The bell tower is the final step. As I climb, the air grows even colder. My hands are shaking, but I force myself to continue. The walls creak with every step I take. The faint scent of something metallic lingers in the air. At the top, I pause, breathless and terrified. The door to the bell tower creaks open. A gust of wind slams into me, making my hair stand on end. There, sitting in the center of the room, is an old, broken bell. The thick iron chains hang limply, rattling faintly in the wind. I step inside. I walk cautiously towards the bell, my eyes scanning every inch of the room. The tower feels abandoned, but there's a strange presence here, one that I can't explain. It feels as if the walls themselves are watching me, pressing in closer with each step. As I near the bell, my eyes land on something strange. faint markings on the stone floor, arranged in a pattern that I almost recognize. It's a series of symbols, old and worn, like someone scratched them into the stone long ago. Some of them are still faintly glowing, a pale blue light that pulses gently in the darkness. The ground underfoot shifts and I realize I'm not alone. My heart races as I turn sharply. There's something behind me. I can feel it. But when I spin around, there's nothing. There, just the shadows stretching across the tower, bending unnaturally in the dim light. My hand trembles as I reach for my camera. The lens focuses shakily on the markings, but the moment I press the record button, the temperature drops. A gust of wind howls through the tower, slamming the door shut with a violent bang. My body stiffens. The whispers. They're back. Low and guttural, coming from all around me. "You're not supposed to be here." I whip my head around, trying to locate the source of the voice. There's nothing. Not a person in sight, just the wind and the unsettling creaks of the church. I stumble backward, my mind spinning. The camera's still recording, the red light blinking furiously, but it's no use. I'm not sure anymore if it's just my mind playing tricks, or if something is truly here with me. The voice grows louder, this time sharper, like a command. "Leave now, before it's too late." I try to move, but my feet feel heavy. My vision blurs as the air grows dense, and then, suddenly, the whispers become screams. Raw, frantic, desperate. They echo in my skull, overwhelming me. I collapse to my knees, clutching my head as the voices claw at me. I scream, but my voice is swallowed by the cacophony. And then, as quickly as it started, the voices stop. The tower falls silent. I sit there, gasping for air, unsure of what's real and what's not. The floor beneath me feels solid again, and the strange markings on the stone floor no longer glow. It's as if everything I heard, everything I felt, has faded into nothing. But then, I hear it. The bell. It tolls once, deep and slow, as if it's waking from a long slumber. A single, resounding toll that shakes the tower to its core. I rise shakily to my feet. The bell. How could it be? It hasn't rung in decades. I step closer, the hairs on my neck standing on end. I reach out to touch the bell, but the moment my fingers graze the cold iron, a searing pain shoots up my arm. I pull my hand back, the sensation leaving a strange, blackened mark on my skin. I look down at my arm, horrified. The mark is moving. It looks like ink, but it's alive, crawling up my arm like something trying to escape from beneath my skin. Fear surges through me, and I turn to leave. I need to get out. But the door won't open. I push against it, harder and harder, but it's stuck, as if something is blocking it from the outside. Then I hear it again. The bell, tolling louder now, faster. It feels as if the tower itself is shaking. The floor beneath me begins to crack, and the markings on the stone seem to pulse with an unnatural energy. I hear footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate steps that come closer with each passing second. I whip around, but there's nothing there. The whispers start again, but this time they're different. They aren't distant. They're right next to me. "You can't leave now." A chill crawls down my spine as I realize the truth. The bell wasn't just tolling. It was calling something. Something from beneath. I scream, pounding on the door with all my strength, but it's no use. The bell tolls again, and the air grows thick. The darkness around me deepens, almost suffocating. I can't breathe. I can't think. And then I see it. The shadow in the corner of the room, just beyond the bell. It's too large, too distorted to be real. Its limbs stretch out like shadows twisted into something unnatural. It's not human. I want to run, but my legs won't move. My body betrays me. The shadow starts to reach for me. Its hand, black as midnight, extends toward my chest. You're the vessel. My breath comes in ragged gasps as I scramble back from the shadow, my body frozen in terror. The door to the bell tower won't budge, and I can't stop staring at the thing. This impossibly dark entity that's now in the room with me. It's like the shadows themselves have taken form, twisting into something that shouldn't exist. It doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. The way it moves toward me is deliberate, as though it already knows my every thought, every move I'm going to make before I even make it. I try to run. I stumble backwards, pushing off the floor, but my legs feel like jelly. My hands slide across the walls, searching for something, anything to help me get away from this thing. But there's nothing. The church is silent except for the relentless tolling of the bell. Each ring echoes in my skull, shaking my core, leaving my limbs numb. My vision is blurring and I feel dizzy. The shadow moves closer. I scream, but the sound is drowned out by the bell. I don't know how long I've been on the ground, huddled there, shaking like a leaf. When I finally gather the courage to look up again, I see something that chills me to my very bones. The shadow hasn't moved. It's just standing there, watching me. And then, I notice something. In its hand, the thing is holding something. Small. Something I almost didn't notice before. A book. The same book that's been tormenting me for days. The book I found in the basement of St. Elma's. The one that whispered in my dreams. I can feel it. The book is calling to me. It's not just some artifact, it's a key to whatever this shadow is, whatever it wants. The shadow shifts, extending its arm toward me. The book now dangles in front of my face, and I swear I can hear it whispering. My name. I can hear the echoes of the voices from the tower. The voices I've been trying to escape. Take it. I don't want to take it. My instincts scream at me to run, to escape, to leave this nightmare behind. But my hand betrays me. It moves on its own, reaching out, trembling as I grasp the book. As soon as my fingers close around it, everything goes still. The moment I touch the book, an intense heat rushes through me. My skin feels like it's burning, like the book is alive, and its energy is coursing through my veins. The shadow, now silent, watches me, its hollow eyes boring into me with an intensity that's almost suffocating. The bell stops ringing. The church seems to hold its breath. I feel like I'm suspended in time, my body unable to move, as if I'm trapped in some kind of unnatural stasis. You are the one, the shadow whispers. It's not a voice. It's an understanding, an echo in my mind, a cold certainty that chills me more than anything I've felt before. You are the vessel, the one who will open the path. I try to speak, but my mouth is dry. My body aches as if it's being torn apart. The words of the book begin to burn on the pages, twisting into symbols I can't understand. But the feeling grows. The book's power is growing stronger, spreading its influence across me. I try to drop the book, but my hand won't let go. It's like I'm chained to it, bound by forces I can't comprehend. The shadow laughs, and it sounds like 1,000 souls wailing in agony. It's too late now. You are part of the ritual. The price has been paid. The pain intensifies, and I fall to my knees, clutching my head. The words of the book pouring into my mind like a torrent. The walls of the church pulse with energy, the room spinning as if I'm falling through the very fabric of reality itself. Suddenly everything goes dark, not just the room. Everything. I'm no longer in the church. I'm standing in a vast, empty void, blackness as far as the eye can see. But even in this infinite darkness, there's something here with me. A shape. A silhouette. Faint at first, but growing clearer with every passing second. It's a figure. Tall and unnaturally thin, draped in tattered robes. It's holding something. A book, identical to the one I'm clutching. The figure speaks, but there's no sound. The words form in my mind, and I understand them instantly. You are the last. The one who will end the cycle. The figure reaches toward me, and the book, in my hands, trembles violently. The pages turn of their own accord, and I can't stop them. I'm frozen in place, watching as the pages flip faster and faster, the writing becoming more frantic, more desperate. The bell must toll for the vessel to take its place. The figure whispers. I want to scream, to cry out, but no sound escapes my mouth. I try to move, to run, but I can't. I'm trapped. The figure steps closer, and I realize with horror that it's not just a vision. It's the entity, the one that's been manipulating me all along. It reaches out, and just before it touches me, I wake up. I'm back in the bell tower, gasping for air. My hands are still clutching the book, the heat radiating from its pages. The shadow is gone, but the oppressive weight in the room hasn't lifted. If anything, it's worse now. The door is still closed, but the sound of something outside fills the air, a low resonating hum like a bell tolling in the distance. I can feel it in my bones. Something is coming. I need to escape before it's too late. I struggle to stand, my body still weak from the vision and the book's power. My head is spinning. My vision is clouded with the symbols from the pages, and I can't make sense of it all. It's like I'm losing myself in the very ritual I've uncovered. With one final burst of energy, I push open the door. It creaks. The air outside thick with the sense of doom that's been building. I stagger out of the tower, clutching the book to my chest. But as I reach the bottom of the church's steps, I hear the sound that will haunt me forever. The bell tolls again. I turn around, but the church is no longer a place of refuge. It's a prison. The bell tolls again, louder this time, as though it's mocking me, telling me that I've already lost. I run. I don't know where I'm going. I just need to get away. The book burns in my hands, its power still pulsating. But no matter how far I run, no matter how fast I try to escape, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being followed, that the shadow, the entity, is behind me. The toll of the bell echoes, and in the distance I hear a voice. It's not in my mind this time, it's real. It's too late. The ground beneath my feet trembles. The shadow is here. It's coming for me. I turn a corner, desperate, and finally stop. I can't run anymore. I know that now. I close my eyes. The bell tolls once more. The darkness is suffocating, choking the very air around me. I can feel it closing in, pushing me into an abyss that I can't escape. The ground beneath my feet trembles, the sound of the bell echoing through my skull, louder than ever before. Every toll reverberates in my bones, shaking me to my core. Run! My legs burn, my body aching with every step, but I can't stop. I can't let myself stop. The shadows are still chasing me, moving faster than I can keep up. I glance over my shoulder, but there's nothing there. Just the emptiness, the oppressive stillness of the world around me. But I can feel it. I know it's there. I can hear its breath, like the soft rustling of wind always just behind me. I'm not running from nothing. I push myself harder, my heart pounding in my chest, but the streets around me twist and turn, as if the world itself is rearranging to trap me. Every corner is another dead end, another step closer to the dark force that's pulling me in. The bell tolls again, and this time I hear something else. Voices, screams. They're distant but growing closer, as if 1,000 souls are being drawn into the same vortex I am. I trip, my knees scraping the pavement as I collapse to the ground. The book slips from my grasp, but I don't have the strength to reach for it. I lie there, gasping, as the sounds grow louder. The bell rings again, the voices scream, and then I hear a whisper, soft but unmistakable. You're mine now. 3. Air thickens, and suddenly I'm no longer alone. I turn, and there it is. The shadow. The thing that has been hunting me, that's been feeding on my fear. It stands there, its form shifting in and out of focus, as if it's made of smoke, darkness, and the very essence of nightmare. I don't know how to describe it. Its presence is overwhelming, a weight that presses down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I can't escape it. I've tried, but there's nowhere left to run. You belong to the ritual now. The shadow growls. The words seep into my mind like poison. You have already opened the door. The cycle must be completed. The realization hits me like a freight train. The book, the bell, the visions, they were all part of it. I've been led here, drawn to this place, to this moment. And now, there's no turning back. It's too late to escape. The price has been paid. The shadow steps forward, its form growing larger, closer. My hands tremble as I reach for the book, but I know it's futile. The ritual has already claimed me. The darkness has already taken hold. The shadow looms over me, and I can feel the cold emanating from it. It wraps around me, its tendrils reaching into my mind, digging into the very core of my being. The book burns in my hands, and I realize that it's not just a book. It's a key, a gateway, a conduit for the darkness that's been hunting me. You will be the vessel. You will carry the curse. The words echo in my mind, and I feel a sharp pain in my chest. It's as if something is being torn from me, pulled away, and in its place, an emptiness fills the void. The bell tolls again, and this time, it's not just a sound, it's a vibration, a pulse that thrums through my body, making every nerve in my body scream. I try to fight it. I try to push the shadow away, but it's impossible. My body moves against my will, drawn towards it, compelled to do its bidding. And then, I understand. The shadow is not just a monster. It's the embodiment of the curse. The book was never meant for me to read. It was never meant for anyone to read. The curse was never meant to be unleashed, and now it's too late. I've sealed my fate. I look down at my hands, and that's when I see it. The mark. A blackened symbol, etched into my skin, pulsating with dark energy. It's spreading, crawling up my arm, consuming me. The curse has taken root inside of me, and there's no way to stop it now. The shadow leans in, its voice like a low growl in my ear. You will be the one to carry it. You will be the one to open the way. The words are a death sentence, a promise that I will never be free again. I want to scream, to cry, but I can't. My voice is gone. I'm nothing but a puppet now, controlled by the curse, by the entity that has taken everything from me. The world around me begins to warp, the streets twisting and bending in unnatural ways. The shadows grow longer, reaching for me, drawing me closer to the darkness. I can feel it. The darkness is inside me. It's a part of me now. I stumble, my vision blurring, as I try to move away from the shadow. But there's nowhere left to go. The bell tolls again. And this time, it's not just a sound. It's a command. A call to action. I can feel the curse growing stronger, its grip tightening around my soul. The shadow moves closer, its form becoming clearer, more defined. I can see its eyes now. Deep, endless voids that seem to consume everything in their path. "It's over, Dylan," it says, its voice a low guttural rasp. "You have no place in the world anymore. You belong to the darkness. The world is closing in on me. I can feel it. The darkness is all around me, suffocating me, and I can't breathe. The shadow's power is overwhelming, and I know that I have no escape." I close my eyes, and for the first time, I let go. I let the darkness consume me, knowing that there's no way out, no hope left. And then, everything goes silent. The last toll of the bell rings out, and everything goes black. I wake, but I don't know where I am. At first, I think it's just the after effects of a nightmare. A haze of fragmented memories and unsettling images. But then I realize, it's not a dream. This place, this void, it's real, cold, empty. I can feel the weight of it pressing down on me, suffocating me. I try to move, but my body won't obey. My limbs feel heavy, like I'm submerged in something thicker than water, something darker than night itself. The more I struggle, the more the darkness pulls me under. It's like trying to fight against the weight of the world itself. I can't see anything. There's no light, no sound. Just an endless abyss stretching out in all directions. I can't tell which way is up, which way is down. I am suspended in this cold, crushing silence, drifting, lost in an eternal void. And then, I hear it. A voice. Faint, but unmistakable. "You're here." It's not a comforting voice. It's cold, detached. It feels as if it's coming from everywhere at once. The voice of the shadow. The thing that has been chasing me. I feel it reaching into my mind, its presence crawling through my thoughts like a disease. "You are the vessel now, Dylan," the voice says, its tone deep and resonant like it's echoing in my very soul. "You have no place in the world of the living. You belong to us now, to the dark." I try to speak, but my mouth is dry, my throat constricted. I try to scream, to beg for mercy, but nothing comes out. I'm trapped, and I know deep down that I'll never escape. The darkness begins to shift, to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. I can feel it, the presence of something ancient, something that has been waiting, biding its time. It's like the world around me is breathing, alive with some dark force, and it's pulling me closer, drawing me into its core. And then I see it, a faint light in the distance, flickering like the flame of a candle. It's weak, struggling to stay alive in this endless void, but it's there. I focus on it, and as I move toward it, slowly, painfully, the light grows brighter. But it's not warm. It's not comforting. It's cold and hollow, like it's burning with the light of the dead. It's not the light of hope, but the light of something far worse, something older than anything I could comprehend. I reach for it, drawn to it against my will. I know I should turn away, but I can't. The darkness pulls me, drags me toward it, and the light flickers out, replaced by a vision of the shadow standing before me. "You cannot escape," it says, its voice now a low growl. "You were always meant to come here." I try to back away, but my legs betray me. I collapse to the ground, and the shadow looms closer. Its form is clearer now, more defined, and I can see its eyes, endless, bottomless pits of despair. "This is your fate," it whispers, its breath cold against my skin. There is no escape. The ritual is complete. The weight of its words crashes down on me. I want to scream, to beg for mercy, but there's nothing left in me. No hope, no will to fight. The curse has consumed me, and I am nothing but a shell of the person I once was. The shadow reaches out, its form solidifying, until it's standing directly over me. I feel its cold fingers on my forehead, marking me with the same blackened symbol that is burned into my skin. The curse has fully taken hold, and there is no escaping it now. I can feel it spreading, seeping into my very soul. It's like poison, slow and insidious, curling its way through every fiber of my being. The darkness fills me, consumes me, and I realize with horror that I've become part of it. "You are now one of us," the shadow says, its voice filled with triumph. "The ritual is complete. You will carry the curse, and soon it will spread. There will be no escape for anyone." I try to push it away, to resist, but I have nothing left. My body is numb, my soul shredded by the weight of the curse. The shadow leans down, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. "And now, Dylan, you will walk the earth with us, spreading the darkness wherever you go." The words burn through me, and I can feel the transformation begin. My body shifts, warps, as the curse takes root, and I realize that I've become something else, something not quite human. The void begins to crack, fractures appearing in the blackness, and I hear the toll of the bell again, louder this time. It's deafening, shaking the very foundation of my being. The sound grows, louder and more insistent, until it becomes a roaring cacophony. The world around me begins to shift, morphing into something unrecognizable. The edges blur, reality slipping away like sand through my fingers. I am no longer in control of my body. My hands twitch and curl involuntarily, and the darkness inside me urges me forward, toward whatever waits beyond this broken world. I feel myself walking, no, being pulled, toward the fractured edges of the void. The bell tolls again, and this time, it's not just a sound, it's a signal, a command. I step forward, feeling the world unravel around me. The shadow follows, its presence heavy on my back, its grip tightening with every step. I look around, but I see nothing, just the blackness, the swirling void, and the endless tolling of the bell. "You're one of us now," the shadow whispers, its voice filled with triumph. "There's no going back. You will carry the curse, and you will be our harbinger." I take another step, and the darkness consumes me. The last toll of the bell rings out, and I fall into the darkness. Ryan Cooper had always been a quiet, confident man. But beneath the surface, there was a man haunted by trauma, a survivor who had seen too much. He had been a firefighter for over 10 years, and it was a profession he loved. But it came with its own price, the kind of price that left permanent marks on your soul. The memories of a fire that killed his entire team still tormented him. It was on a cold winter night, with the wind howling fiercely outside, that Ryan found himself fleeing from a violent storm. The sky had darkened, and the storm's wrath had overwhelmed everything in its path. With no shelter in sight, Ryan found himself stumbling into an old, decaying building. The burned-down orphanage that had been abandoned for years. The orphanage was a relic of an old fire disaster, one that was never fully explained. The structure had been damaged by a massive blaze that left it gutted, with charred walls and blackened windows. Ryan had heard rumors about the place, the stories about it being haunted, but he had dismissed those stories, telling himself it was just the overactive imaginations of people who didn't understand the nature of his work. But tonight was different. Ryan's boots made a dull thud against the cold, wet floor as he pushed open the creaking door. Inside, the air was thick with an unsettling dampness, the smell of rot hanging in the air. The walls were scorched, with remnants of the fire still visible, burn marks and singed wood. The rooms were empty, save for the ghosts of the past. There was something undeniably off about the place. Something that made Ryan's skin crawl as he stepped further inside. His breath was slow but shallow as he made his way through the dark hallways. The only sound that could be heard was the soft drip, drip, drip of water from the ceiling, falling from the broken roof above. For a moment, Ryan tried to shake off the sense of unease that began to take root in his chest. The storm outside was fierce, and it was his only option to stay here. But the farther he walked, the more oppressive the silence became. It was as if the building was alive in its own twisted way, watching him. He reached a corner of the orphanage, where a small staircase led upstairs to the remnants of what used to be dormitories. The walls were covered with peeling wallpaper, their edges curling like the remnants of a long-forgotten past. As he climbed the stairs, the air grew colder. It was an unnatural cold, one that felt like it reached deep into his bones. There was a sense of being watched, of something just beyond his line of sight. But every time he turned, there was nothing. Just shadows. Just the cold silence of a building long abandoned. He paused on the second floor, where the hallway stretched out in front of him like an endless tunnel. The walls were cracked, and the floors creaked under his weight, but nothing seemed out of place, until he heard it. A scream. At first, Ryan thought it was his imagination, the wind howling outside. Or maybe the pressure of the storm playing tricks on his mind. But then, it came again. A scream. It was faint, distant, almost childlike. A voice filled with agony. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. His firefighter instincts kicked in, and he spun around, searching the darkened hallway. There was no one. Nothing. The scream came again, but this time, it was closer. A chill ran down Ryan's spine, and his mind raced. Was someone here? Had the storm forced others into the building just as it had him? But there was no answer. Only the eerie silence that followed, suffocating and oppressive. Ryan's breath quickened. His hand reached for the flashlight at his belt. As he flicked it on, the beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the dusty and shattered remnants of the orphanage. The light flickered slightly, and for a moment, the walls seemed to warp and bend, distorting in ways that felt impossible. Screams. There they were again, louder now, closer, but still coming from nowhere. The wind outside had stopped. The silence had been replaced by a growing sense of dread. Ryan felt his pulse quicken, but he pushed forward. His feet were heavy, as though the floor was trying to drag him down, urging him to stop, to give in to the fear that was beginning to wrap around his throat. His flashlight flickered once again, and just as it did, he saw it. A shadow. It wasn't a person. It was something tall, dark, moving quickly, slipping between the shadows like a nightmare that had no form. Ryan froze. It was gone in an instant, swallowed by the darkness, leaving nothing but the soft sound of his breathing. He tried to tell himself it was a trick of the light, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. The orphanage was never truly abandoned. Something was here, and it was not human. The silence that had filled the orphanage was almost suffocating. Every step Ryan took echoed in the long, empty hallways as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting. The only sounds were the distant thrum of his own heartbeat and the soft, insistent drip, drip, drip of water leaking from the roof above. As Ryan advanced deeper into the structure, the familiar smells of damp wood and old decay filled the air. His flashlight beam danced over the charred remains of what used to be furniture, now reduced to brittle piles of ash and warped metal. The walls were scarred with the marks of a fire long past, black streaks where flames had once clawed hungrily at the wood. The remnants of burned wallpaper hung like peeling skin, the faded images of children's drawings obscured by soot and time. There was a palpable sense of disrepair about the place. Nothing was as it should be, but it wasn't just the physical damage that troubled Ryan. It was the unsettling presence that seemed to linger in every corner, watching him from the shadows. Even though he couldn't see anything, he could feel it. As he walked past the remnants of the orphanage's old library, Ryan felt the air grow colder, a deep chill that crept into his bones. The warmth of the storm outside seemed to stay at the threshold, as though the building itself was refusing to allow any comfort or solace. Ryan stopped in front of a broken window that looked out into the night. The storm had passed, but the black sky remained, an impenetrable void of silence and darkness. The moon hung low, casting an eerie silver glow over the ruins. He turned his attention back to the room. Ashes covered the floor, remnants of what used to be cherished objects, now destroyed by flames. But it wasn't just the fire's destruction that haunted him. It was the sense of forgotten lives, of children who had once called this place home, now lost to time. As Ryan stepped deeper into the room, the floor creaked underfoot, and he could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. Something wasn't right here. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long, as if they had a life of their own. Every time he turned his back to them, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. And then there was that familiar scream again, a sharp, agonizing cry that pierced the silence. He spun around, heart racing. But once again, there was nothing. Just empty space. Just shadows. The screaming voices in the distance started to become clearer, more distinct. They weren't just random cries. There was a pattern. To them, a rhythm. Ryan could almost feel their presence in the walls, a collective agony that reverberated through the structure, like a long-forgotten memory trapped within the confines of the building. Ryan wiped his brow, his hand trembling as he fumbled to check his flashlight once more. The light flickered again, casting the room in a stuttering glow. His pulse hammered in his ears and he felt the air shift. There was a growing pressure in the room, an oppressive weight that threatened to crush him under its intensity. As he moved, the beam of light cut through the blackness, illuminating strange shapes in the far corners of the room. Shadows that seemed too distinct to be ordinary, as if the walls themselves were alive, shifting with unseen movements. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. No one was here. But the shadows. They were moving. He backed away slowly, unwilling to take his eyes off the corners, as if by keeping them within sight, he could somehow control them. But the darkness shifted again, this time closer. He heard soft, labored breathing that was not his own. It was a low, ragged sound coming from behind him. Ryan whirled around, but when he turned, the sound vanished, leaving only the unsettling hum of the building itself. Sweat poured down his face, down his heart beat faster, faster, and the sense of being watched became almost unbearable. As his flashlight shifted over the debris in the room, it illuminated something that froze him in place. A bloody handprint had appeared on the wall, a perfect, red outline, as though someone had pressed their palm there, leaving behind a trail of crimson that dripped to the floor. Ryan's breath caught in his chest. He rushed forward, shining the light over it. The handprint was fresh, its edges still slick and glistening, as though it had just been made. It wasn't just the blood, It was the pressure of the hand, like someone had pressed it there in desperation. His mind raced, his heart thundering, in his chest. He was certain that there was no one else here. But that handprint was undeniable. It was a warning. Ryan felt his stomach twist with fear. There was something in the building with him. It was watching him. It was waiting. And then, the water dripping from the ceiling stopped. The building fell into a stillness that felt unnatural, like everything was holding its breath. He turned, scanning the room, as the weight of the silence pressed down on him like a physical force. His flashlight flickered again, casting fleeting shadows over the walls. And then, there was a low growl from the corner of the room. The growl was deep, resonating from somewhere in the shadows, like a sound that had been waiting for years to be unleashed. Ryan's heart leapt into his throat, and every instinct screamed at him to run. But his legs were frozen, as though the very air had thickened and wrapped around him like chains. He was trapped. The silence returned, but it was different now. Heavy, suffocating. Ryan could feel the pressure building in the room, like the very walls were closing in on him. He forced himself to take a step back, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The light flickered again, casting the room in and out of darkness, and the shadows seemed to grow more alive. With every flicker of the light, it was as though the room was changing. The burned walls seemed to shift, and the cold air grew even colder. The scent of rot filled the air, overpowering the musty smell of decay, as if something was decomposing right before his eyes. He wiped the sweat from his brow, but the cold only seemed to intensify. And then, in the distance, he heard it again. The screaming. This time it was louder, more urgent. It echoed through the halls, twisting and stretching as if coming from deep within the bowels of the building. The screams weren't just distant cries, they were close, as if someone was in the room with him. Ryan spun around, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The flashlight beam danced wildly, and his body was on high alert. Every nerve screamed for him to run, to get out, but there was no way out. The door he had come through was no longer visible in the growing darkness. The walls of the orphanage seemed to close in around him. The shadows weren't just in the corners now. They were moving, shifting, writhing like something alive. His breath came in shallow gasps. Ryan's hand shook violently as he clutched the flashlight tighter, but it did little to calm his growing panic. The air seemed to grow thicker, heavier, as if it were suffused with a kind of malevolent energy. He could feel it press against his skin, tightening his chest, choking the very breath from him. He had to get out, but the door, the exit, had vanished, replaced by more of the burned ruins. No, no, no. This isn't happening. Ryan stumbled, backwards, his mind racing. Was this real? Was he losing his mind? His breaths came faster, shorter. His vision blurred as the darkness seemed to press closer. There was something in the air, something he couldn't explain but could feel with every fiber of his being. Suddenly the scream stopped, and in that silence, there was something even more terrifying. Something he couldn't yet name. His heart thundered as he scanned the room, searching for any sign of movement. The shadows stretched further, darker, thicker. They didn't just hide in the corners anymore. They crept toward him, gathering like a storm. Ryan closed his eyes for a second, trying to steady himself. But when he opened them, a figure stood before him. It was tall. Too tall. A shadow, no features, but the form was unmistakable. It loomed in front of him, towering over him like something inhuman. Ryan's breath hitched in his throat. The figure seemed to pulse with an unnatural presence, its form distorted as if reality itself was bending around it. It didn't move, just stood, there, watching him with an unseen gaze. He couldn't take his eyes off of it. It felt like something was crawling inside his skin, like its gaze was reaching into his mind, pulling at the darkest corners of his thoughts. Ryan took a step back, his feet stumbling over the uneven ground. His hand trembled as he raised the flashlight, the beam weak against the growing shadow. He should have run. He should have turned and fled, but his body was frozen in place. The screaming started again, but it was no longer distant. It was right in his ear. "Help me." The voice was faint, a mere whisper, but it was as if it was coming from all around him. A plea, desperate and full of terror. Ryan's blood ran cold. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. The figure's shadow grew longer, wrapping around him like a shroud. He could feel it pressing in on him, suffocating him. The walls were too close. The air was too thick. The screams kept coming, louder and louder, until it felt like the building itself was screaming. Ryan's hands shook as he tried to hold the flashlight steady, but it was as though his very body was betraying him. The bloodied handprint from earlier seemed to pulse in his mind. Where had it come from? The vision of the handprint burned into his eyes, twisting and warping with every blink. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. The room started to blur, and Ryan's vision swam. His breath caught in his throat as the figure seemed to grow, its shadow stretching out, wrapping around him like something sentient. "Help me." Ryan could barely breathe now, the suffocating weight of fear pressing down on him. It wasn't just the fear of the unknown anymore. It was something more, something worse, something that wanted him. He stumbled backward, his legs weak, his eyes frantically searching for an escape. But there was none. In the distance, the low growl returned, a guttural sound that reverberated through the building's walls. It wasn't just one growl, it was many. A chorus of darkness. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to steady himself, but all he could feel was the presence around him. Pressing, suffocating, relentless. Ryan's breath was shallow, every inhalation a battle against the thickening air. He backed into the corner of the ruined orphanage, his flashlight quivering in his hand. The sound of dripping water echoed in the stillness, but it felt wrong, unnatural. Each drop of water that splashed onto the cracked floor sent ripples of unease down his spine. His eyes darted around the room, unable to focus on any one thing. The shadows, too thick to be natural, clung to the walls, creeping towards him. The more he looked, the more he felt them. Those eyes that seemed to be watching, but not from any visible source. It was as though the darkness itself was alive, an entity that was just out of his reach, yet closer than ever before. Whispers. The voices had changed. They weren't loud anymore. They weren't screams. They were soft, unintelligible murmurs that slithered through the air. The kind of sound you couldn't quite make sense of, but your mind couldn't stop trying to decipher. Ryan clenched his jaw and tried to steady himself. There had to be an explanation. It was just the isolation, the storm outside, the fire, the exhaustion from everything he'd been through. That's all it was, right? But as he scanned the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving in the shadows, something that had no right to be there. Then he saw it. A shadow, too tall, too thin. It shifted just at the edge of the flashlight beam. Just enough to be noticed, but not enough to be fully seen. His heart skipped a beat as his hand tightened around the flashlight, his knuckles white. The figure didn't move like a person should. It was unnatural, as though it was made of darkness itself, bending and stretching in ways that defied logic. Ryan swallowed hard and took a hesitant step forward. The shadow seemed to elongate, stretching farther across the room. And for a brief moment he thought he saw something. Something that shouldn't be possible. A hand, maybe? Long and twisted, reaching from the darkness, its fingers impossibly long, curling around the edge of the shadows. His pulse quickened. He stumbled back, his foot hitting a piece of rubble on the floor, making a loud crash that echoed through the silence. The shadow snapped back, vanishing, but the whispers grew louder, closer. Ryan gritted his teeth, but his hands were trembling so violently that he had to grip the flashlight with both hands to stop it from shaking. The air was thick now, almost stifling, the moisture from the dripping water seeming to increase with every second, though nothing had changed in the environment. He glanced down. A faint red stain appeared on the floor beneath him. His breath caught in his throat as he slowly knelt down, the flashlight flickering, casting an unsteady light over the stain. It wasn't a puddle of water, but something else, something darker. A handprint, a bloody handprint, had appeared on the floor, not far from where he was standing. The red liquid pooled and spread, though it didn't drip. It just sat there, undisturbed, as though it had always been there. His mind screamed at him to get out, to leave this place before it consumed him, before whatever was here took him too. But the moment he turned to leave, he froze. There, in the distance, he saw it again, the shadowy figure. But this time it was no longer lingering in the background. It was closer, much closer. Ryan's heart slammed against his ribcage as he felt a cold, damp breeze brush against his skin, though no windows were open. The air was different now, electric with something he couldn't comprehend. The shadow didn't have a face, but Ryan felt its gaze on him. He could feel the weight of it pressing against his chest, pushing all the air from his lungs. The longer he stood there, the more he realized that it wasn't just a shadow. It was alive. Something about it was hunting him, moving ever closer. As he slowly backed away, the whispers grew louder, more desperate, though he couldn't make out the words. His ears rang, and his skin prickled, the air seeming to grow colder by the second. The shadows closed in on him, as if the room itself was becoming smaller, tighter. Ryan's feet slipped on the wet floor as he stumbled backwards. A loud crash rang through the room as something sharp pierced his shoulder. He winced in pain but dared not look. He had to focus, had to get away. The flashlight flickered once more, and as it went dark, the whispering stopped. It was completely, eerily quiet. For a second, Ryan felt relief, like the nightmare was over. But then, a low growl broke the silence, vibrating the floor beneath. Him. His stomach churned as the sound rumbled through his bones, unmistakably close. Ryan felt the weight of his terror grip him in that moment. The shadows, the whispers, the growing sense of dread. It wasn't just in his head. Something was there, in the room with him, something that didn't belong. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the growl stopped. The oppressive silence returned. But this time it was different. He wasn't alone. The shadow was still there, but now it was moving. It was no longer just a vague presence in the corner. It was alive, crawling toward him, slow and deliberate. Ryan's pulse raced as he tried to move, to run, but his legs were like lead. The shadow wasn't just a shape anymore. It had taken on form, twisting and slithering through the darkened room like an insidious force. Ryan stumbled back, his hand reaching for the door, only to find it gone. Ryan's heart hammered in his chest as he struggled to breathe. Every inhale felt like it was being stolen from him by the oppressive air, thick and suffocating. The shadow wasn't just moving anymore. It was pressing in on him from all sides. He could feel its presence, like an invisible hand clutching at his throat. But when he looked, there was nothing there. The whispers had returned, louder this time, mingling with the persistent sound of water dripping from somewhere deep within the walls. The once distant voices now seemed to be right next to him, whispering his name. But it was no longer just a voice. It was a chorus, a symphony of voices, angry, pleading, and calling to him. "Get out, Ryan." It's too late. His mind raced, trying to keep up with the events unfolding around him. But it was a losing battle. He had always been a practical man, grounded in reality. But here, in this ruined orphanage, with shadows that didn't follow logic, and voices that came from nowhere, he was starting to lose his grip on the truth. His hands trembled as he wiped sweat from his brow, the chill of the air making it all the more unbearable. He was alone, right? There was no one here. There was no thing here except for his fear. He could do this. He could make it out. He just needed to stay calm. But the shadows were moving. Ryan turned, eyes frantically scanning the room. The walls were no longer static. They seemed to be shifting, groaning under the weight of an unseen force. The whispers intensified, rising to a crescendo. The air grew colder, thick with an unnameable fear that clung to him, suffocating him. He tried to run, tried to break free, but his legs felt like they were filled with cement. The ground beneath him seemed to swallow his feet as he stumbled forward, his mind slipping in and out of focus. It was all too much to understand, too much to endure. "I can't breathe," he muttered, choking on the suffocating air. His thoughts began to spin, each one crashing into the next, building a tangled mess of terror and confusion. The past, his past, began to bleed into the present. The fire. The screams of those he couldn't save. The faces of the children, their terrified eyes haunting him. The guilt had always been there, hidden in the back of his mind, lurking like a shadow. Now it was rising to the surface, threatening to swallow him whole. Was this his punishment? Was this place, this nightmare, a result of the trauma he couldn't escape? His mind reeled. Could it be? Could the shadow in the room be real, or was it just his mind cracking under the weight of everything? Was it his guilt manifesting itself, or something darker? Something worse? His breathing grew, erratic. He could feel himself spiraling, losing control. The walls seemed to close in around him, and he could feel his sanity slipping further with every passing second. "It's not real," he muttered to himself, but his voice trembled, betraying him. "It's not real. It's not real. I'm just tired. I just need to get out of here." But as his words echoed in the empty room, a sudden shift in the atmosphere made his stomach churn. The walls seemed to bend around him, and he could hear the creaking of something old, something ancient. The smell of smoke, of charred flesh, filled his nostrils, and his heart lurched as he saw the remnants of burnt bodies, the twisted faces of the children he'd failed, appear before him in flashes. "Help me," they whispered, their voices distorted, blending into one haunting cry. Ryan collapsed to the floor, clutching his head. The tears were hot on his cheeks now as he tried to pull himself together, tried to focus on something, anything that would ground him. He had to leave. He couldn't stay here. He couldn't let whatever this was, this thing, consume him like it had consumed so many others. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw them, the children, their burned faces, their hands reaching out for him, begging for salvation. He heard their screams, felt their pain. "I'm sorry," he whispered, choking on the words. "I'm so sorry. I couldn't save you." He forced himself to stand, his legs shaking beneath him. Every step, an effort. He had to get out. He had to escape. But as he turned to leave, the shadow moved again. This time it wasn't just a vague silhouette in the corner. It was solid, massive, and it shifted, as if it were alive, as if it had been waiting for him to realize it all along. Its eyes, though never fully seen, were there, always there, burning into him, pulling him back into the depths of his own guilt. He stumbled forward, but the moment he turned to the door, he froze. The door was gone. It had vanished. The wall in front of him was solid, as though it had never existed. Ryan's mind shattered. The walls were pressing in on him, the air thick and suffocating. His breath was ragged now, his heartbeat erratic. He didn't know what was real anymore. He didn't know what was happening to him. But then, just as suddenly as it all started, the voices stopped. The room was silent again. Ryan's chest heaved with terror as he stared into the emptiness, into the darkness, waiting for the inevitable. Ryan's entire body trembled as the world around him darkened once more. The light from his flashlight flickered weakly, casting long, exaggerated shadows against the walls. The air was colder now, a biting chill that sank deep into his bones. But it wasn't just the temperature that made him shiver. It was the overwhelming presence that seemed to engulf him, swallowing every ounce of his sanity. He couldn't escape it. No matter how hard he tried, his legs refused to carry him. It was as if the very floor had become an anchor, tethering him to this place, to this nightmare. The voices had stopped, but the silence was worse. It hung heavily in the air, thick and suffocating, like a blanket of dread. Ryan's pulse thundered in his ears as he backed away, his eyes frantically searching for any sign of the exit, but there was nothing. Just endless decaying walls and the remnants of something long forgotten. The burn marks on the walls stared back at him, twisted and distorted, as though the orphanage itself had been scorched by something far more malevolent than fire. Suddenly, the sound of scraping metal cut through the silence, followed by an unnatural creak, the floorboards groaning beneath something enormous. Ryan's heart leapt in his chest, and before he could react, the ground beneath him began to tremble. Something was moving, something huge, and it wasn't far away. The shadow. Ryan's breath hitched as he whirled around, his flashlight casting fleeting beams of light on the walls. But the shadow wasn't where it had been before. It was closer now, creeping up behind him, so fast that it seemed to be consuming the very air around him. Then it emerged, a massive shape, taller than any man, stretching and twisting like a malformed creature. Its body was shrouded in darkness, an all-consuming blackness that no light could pierce. It seemed to have no form, no shape, just an overwhelming presence that stretched and contracted, writhing in the dark. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. As the shadow moved toward him, its shape growing more distinct. But it wasn't just its size that paralyzed him. It was the force it emanated. The air around him crackled with malice. It was as if the entity itself had a weight, an oppressive force that crushed everything in its wake. Ryan tried to scream, but his voice caught in his throat. He reached for his radio, his hands shaking uncontrollably, but it was too late. His hands slipped off the device, and the shadows seemed to close in around him, suffocating him. Suddenly, the walls seemed to come alive. Blood, dark, thick, and oily, began to drip from the ceiling, splattering onto the floor with sickening slaps. Ryan's eyes widened as he stared at the growing pools of crimson, the sickly smell of decay filling his nostrils. The walls themselves seemed to be bleeding, as though the very structure of the building was alive with a twisted, malevolent force. The shadow loomed in front of him now, a looming mass, with glowing red eyes that pierced through the dark. Ryan's chest tightened as his throat went dry. His vision blurred and his head spun. The creature was closer now, its presence suffocating him. He tried to move, to escape, but his legs wouldn't obey. He couldn't breathe. The smell of burning flesh filled his nostrils, the memories of the fire and the screams returning with terrifying clarity. He could almost feel the heat, the pain, the panic all over again. The creature's eyes gleamed with an otherworldly malice as it moved closer, its form shifting, twisting in a grotesque dance of shadows. Ryan wanted to look away, but he couldn't. It was like his eyes were locked on the creature, drawn to it as if his soul was being pulled toward it. No. No, no, no! Ryan gasped, his mind spiraling. A low, guttural growl rumbled from the creature, a sound that seemed to come from the very depths of hell. The growl turned into a distorted screech, deafening and horrific, as the entity's form began to contort, its body elongating in unnatural ways. Ryan could feel the pressure on his chest, the weight of the thing pulling at him, crushing him. A flash of lightning outside illuminated the room for a brief second, and for that fleeting moment, Ryan caught a glimpse of what the creature truly was. It was more than just a shadow. It was a twisted, horrible amalgamation of nightmares, a mass of broken bones, torn flesh, and souls long lost. Ryan's mind could no longer comprehend what he was seeing. His body couldn't take it anymore. His breath came in short, shallow gasps, and his vision went black as his legs finally gave way beneath him. In that final moment of clarity, as the creature loomed over him, Ryan realized something far worse than his own death. It wasn't just a shadow that had been haunting him. It was the souls of all those he had failed, the children from the fire, the ones he couldn't save. They were now trapped in this twisted form, tormented forever. With that realization, his body collapsed, and his vision faded to darkness. It was a rainy afternoon when Daniel, a recent college dropout, found himself walking through the quiet streets of a small, weather-beaten town. A place that time had seemingly forgotten. The kind of town where the only things to do were eat at the greasy diner or visit the small old video store that stood on the corner of Main Street. The store was called Real Nightmare, and it was unlike any other store in town. It was covered in dust, with half-worn posters of old slasher flicks plastered over the windows, the neon sign flickering as if it were fighting for its last breath. Daniel had been told about it by a friend who mentioned it only in passing. A place for people who appreciated the old-school, low-budget horror films of the 80s and 90s. He wasn't particularly interested in horror films, but there was something oddly intriguing about the place, something that whispered secrets he couldn't ignore. Entering the store. When Daniel pushed open the door, a bell chimed overhead. The place smelled of old popcorn and mold, but the scent was oddly comforting. Rows upon rows of VHS tapes lined the shelves. Classic films, forgotten gems, and some that seemed to be part of an entirely different world. The store was a time capsule. The only person inside was Trent, the owner. He was a middle-aged man with a wild beard and an unsettling intensity in his eyes. His appearance reminded Daniel of someone who had spent far too much time in a basement, surrounded by VHS tapes and the macabre. "Can I help you find something?" Trent's voice was a deep rasp, as though he had spent years talking to no one but the films. "I'm just browsing," Daniel replied, not sure how to respond to the odd man. "Well, let me know if you want something truly special," Trent said with a knowing smile, one that made Daniel feel uneasy. "I have a back room, full of tapes that are unique." Daniel, out of sheer curiosity, wandered toward the back of the store. The shelves here were older, the tapes worn down to their cases. There was something about the tapes that felt off. Some of the covers were torn, others faded, as though they'd been watched too many times. Trent, who had followed Daniel, now stood in the back room, smiling wide. "You have an interest in rare films, I assume?" Yeah. Sure," Daniel said, now feeling the weight of the strange atmosphere. Something felt different here, as if the walls were alive, watching him, waiting for him to pick the wrong tape. With a flourish, Trent pulled a tape from the shelf. It was old, the label barely legible, and the cover was a simple black design with a single crimson-red text that read, "The Death Tape." Trent handed it to Daniel with an almost reverent air. "Do you know the story behind this one?" Trent asked, his tone turning serious. Daniel shook his head. "No, but it looks old. Is it some kind of cult film?" Trent's grin widened. "It's no cult film. It's cursed. Whoever watches it dies. The story is..." Before Trent could finish, the tape in Daniel's hand shuddered violently. It felt as though a pulse was running through it, a heartbeat that didn't belong to anything natural. Daniel froze. His fingers trembled as he looked back at Trent. "You're kidding, right?" Daniel laughed nervously. Trent's expression remained unchanged. "This tape, it's not just a film. It's a curse. Watch it, and you become part of the story. Everyone who watches it is claimed." Daniel hesitated, his gaze dropping to the tape in his hand. It was ridiculous, right? He had heard of cursed items, but this was just a film. And yet, something in the way Trent looked at him sent a shiver down his spine. "Why do you keep it?" Daniel asked. "Because it's part of my collection," Trent replied, his voice lowering. "It's not about the movie. It's about the power behind it. This tape has seen things." Daniel was about to say something else, but the store's lights flickered, the temperature seemed to drop, and the shelves seemed to stretch upward, growing taller as if the store itself were shifting. Suddenly, Trent's voice broke the silence. "Some tapes have a life of their own," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This one has taken more than its fair share." The moment of unease, Daniel's stomach churned. He wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't anymore. The whole experience felt like a nightmare, the kind you couldn't wake up from. The store, Trent, and the tapes seemed to be closing in on him. As if sensing Daniel's discomfort, Trent smiled again, almost too eagerly. "Want to watch it?" Trent popped in the tape without waiting for a response. Daniel stared at the screen, feeling a tightening in his chest. What had he just gotten himself into? He watched as the film began, with grainy images of an old cabin, the sounds muffled, as though they were coming from a great distance. But it wasn't long before he realized the film was too real. The lights flickered again. Trent's eyes gleamed with excitement as he whispered, "It started, just like it always does." As Daniel sat frozen in the store, his eyes fixed on the screen, the tension in the room thickened. The grainy footage of the cabin on the screen flickered and warped, as though the film itself was alive. The atmosphere in the store felt heavier, and the flickering lights above him seemed to dim in sync with the images on the screen. The film had shifted. The characters in the movie, once fictional and distant, now seemed eerily familiar. The figure, in the film, clad in tattered clothing, its face obscured by shadows, began to stalk the characters in the same way Daniel felt someone, or something, was watching him. His breath quickened, and his heartbeat pounded in his chest as the screen showed a figure lurking just outside the cabin. Daniel felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine. The air in the room turned icy, and suddenly, the flickering lights above him buzzed loudly and went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. The only light came from the flickering TV, casting a pale glow over the room. "You see it now, don't you?" Trent's voice cut through the darkness, startling Daniel. "The tape. It doesn't just show you a story. It draws you in. What happens on the screen starts to happen in real life." and once you're part of it, there's no escaping it. Daniel was no longer watching the movie. He was living it. Every movement, every sound, every shadow in the store felt as if it were being pulled from the tape and into his world. The footsteps on the screen grew louder, closer, until they seemed to echo in the room around him. Suddenly, Daniel heard something that wasn't part of the movie. A soft tapping noise coming from behind him. His breath caught in his throat. Turning slowly, his eyes scanned the dark room. The shelves of VHS tapes, which moments ago had seemed innocuous, now felt oppressive and suffocating. Then he saw it. A shadow moving across the shelves, creeping toward him. It wasn't Trent. It wasn't even a person. It was something darker, something that didn't belong in this world. The shadow paused for a moment, and for the briefest of moments, Daniel could have sworn he saw glowing red eyes staring back at him. His heart raced, and his body was paralyzed by fear. He tried to move, but his legs felt like lead. The shadow crept closer, and the air seemed to thicken, suffocating him with a sense of dread. He could hear the figure in the film getting closer, footsteps echoing louder, as if both the movie and the world around him were syncing up, bringing the terror to life. Trent stepped forward into the dim light, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. You're feeling it now, aren't you? The presence. It's here. And it's not just in the movie. You're part of it now. Daniel's throat went dry. What do you mean? What is this? What's happening to me? Trent leaned in closer, his breath cold against Daniel's ear. The tape isn't just cursed. It has the power to bring the film's events into reality. People who watch it become part of its story. They live the horrors it shows, trapped in a nightmare that becomes more real with each passing moment. Before Daniel could respond, the shadow moved again. This time, it was much closer, right behind Trent. Daniel tried to shout, but the words caught in his throat. He was too terrified to speak, too terrified to move. Trent, oblivious to the danger creeping behind him, continued. You won't be able to stop it. It takes everything, and once it has you, it doesn't let go. As Trent finished speaking, the shadow lunged forward, but in an instant, it vanished. The room fell silent again, save for the eerie sounds of the movie still playing on the screen. As the night wore on, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. Every flicker of light, every creak of the wooden floorboard seemed to signal something sinister. The store was no longer just a place. It had become a portal, a twisted reflection of the terror playing out on the screen. Daniel's mind raced. He tried to reason with himself. Was it all just in his head? But the sensation of being watched, the constant pressure in his chest, told him otherwise. The more he watched, the more he felt the world around him warping, and then it hit him. The characters in the film had started to look like him, or more accurately, they were taking on his features, his clothes, his very mannerisms. The world in the movie and his own were bleeding into each other. But something was different this time. One of the characters was looking directly at him. The character, a man with dark hair and cold, unblinking eyes, mouthed something Daniel couldn't quite understand, but it sounded like his name. Daniel. Daniel backed away from the screen, his heart racing. But it wasn't the screen he needed to worry about. The room itself had shifted. The walls seemed closer, the aisles of tapes more confined, and the air felt thicker than ever before. Something was wrong in the store, something beyond the tape, and it was now hunting him. Daniel will begin to realize that escaping the store isn't as simple as just leaving. The tapes are tied to the location, and the curse has trapped him within the confines of the video store. As he tries to leave, he encounters more disturbing phenomena. Ghostly apparitions, the distorted figures from the movie, and the killer from the film following him through the store's twisted labyrinth. The terror will escalate as Daniel confronts the reality that there's no escaping the nightmare. The store and the movie are now intertwined, and it's only a matter of time before the curse claims him. Suddenly, the lights flicker again, and Daniel hears the unmistakable sound of footsteps, not from the movie, but from the aisles around him. He's not alone anymore. Daniel's pulse raced as he backed away from the TV, the unnatural flickering of the lights casting eerie shadows over the cramped aisles of the video store. The realization that the movie, the curse, and the store were all intertwined was starting to sink in. As he tried to collect himself, the oppressive atmosphere of the room pressed in on him, suffocating him. The aisles that once seemed familiar now appeared distorted, warped by the curse that was consuming him. The store, which had seemed like just a quirky, old-school shop, now felt like a prison. The shelves of VHS tapes seemed to loom taller, stretching toward the ceiling as though they were closing in on him. He moved toward the front door, hoping that just stepping outside would break the hold of the curse. But as he reached for the handle, he felt a coldness in the air, and the door refused to budge. It was as if it was locked from the other side, or perhaps the store itself had become a different dimension, one that didn't allow him to leave. Suddenly, a shrill noise echoed from the speakers of the TV, followed by a distorted voice, one that Daniel recognized from the tape. The sound was unsettling, like a garbled transmission from another world. "You can't leave." Daniel spun around, his breath shallow. The figure in the movie, the same one with the glowing red eyes, appeared again, but this time it was standing in the doorway of one of the aisles, watching him. He tried to run, but the aisles stretched out endlessly in front of him. The store was changing. The floor seemed to shift beneath him, and the walls began to close in. He could hear footsteps again, slow, deliberate, and close. It wasn't Trent this time. It was the presence, the curse, the entity that had now fully manifested in the store, its power growing with each passing moment. The voice echoed in his head, cold and menacing. Daniel's skin crawled as the sound reverberated through the walls. This is where they all come. The lost souls. The ones who couldn't escape. As Daniel staggered backward, trying to find some semblance of control, a horrifying realization struck him. The store wasn't just a place. It was a trap. And it was feeding on their fear, trapping everyone who came into contact with the cursed tapes. The air grew thicker, the shadows darker, as a distorted version of himself appeared in one of the mirrors hanging on the wall of the store. The reflection was different, pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes staring back at him. This version of himself wore a look of utter dread, as if it had already given up on escape. "It's too late, Daniel." The reflection seemed to speak directly. To him, its voice a hollow echo of his own. The figure reached out, and as it did, Daniel felt an icy cold hand grip his arm from behind. He spun around, but there was nothing there. His heart thundered in his chest as panic took over. He tried to push past the aisles, but they just stretched farther, becoming an endless maze. He was trapped. Suddenly, Trent appeared in the aisle ahead of him, his face pale and worn as though he had already been consumed by the curse. His eyes were wide with fear. "It's happening to you now," Trent whispered, his voice trembling. "The movie, the curse, it's taking you just like it took me. Once it gets in, you can't escape." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. This can't be real. This is just a nightmare. I can leave." But Trent's expression hardened, and he grabbed Daniel's shoulders with a force that was far too strong. "No, you can't leave. It's inside you now. It's in your head. You'll see it everywhere. It will follow you." Daniel felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. His body swayed as the room spun around him, the flickering lights casting strange, distorted shadows on the walls. The store seemed to stretch and warp, its very walls becoming part of the curse. The tapes themselves began to move, shifting, on the shelves as though they had a life of their own. "It won't stop," Trent's voice echoed, growing more frantic. "It will never stop, Daniel." Before Daniel could respond, Trent disappeared. The aisle was empty once more, but the words echoed in his mind. "It will never stop." The lights flickered one more time, and the shadowy figure from the film appeared before Daniel, this time in full form. Its face was covered with dark, rotting skin, its eyes glowing an unnatural red. Its body was twisted and contorted, like something not entirely human, with jagged limbs and fingers that stretched unnaturally long. "You're part of the story now." The creature reached toward him, and Daniel felt a cold hand grip his chest. His breath caught in his throat, and his heart raced as the figure pulled him closer. He tried to fight back, but it was as if the creature's presence was draining his will to fight. He felt the darkness closing in. No one escapes the curse. The figure's voice was a low growl, sending chills down his spine. Suddenly, the creature let out a screech that reverberated through the room. The walls of the store cracked, and the ceiling began to collapse in on itself, like a black hole, pulling everything toward it. The VHS tapes shattered, releasing a toxic, inky mist that filled the air. The floor cracked open, revealing a deep abyss beneath them. Daniel tried to step back, but his feet were stuck in place. The creature loomed over him, and he realized in horror that it wasn't just part of the store. It was part of him now. The lights flickered again, and for a brief moment, everything went dark. In the silence that followed, Daniel could feel the presence of the entity closing in on him. The very store itself seemed to be alive, feeding on his fear, and it would not stop until it had claimed him completely. Daniel's heart raced as he felt the ground beneath his feet begin to shift, the store's very structure becoming a living, breathing organism. The aisles stretched impossibly far, and every step he took only seemed to take him further from any hope of escape. The once familiar store had transformed into something out of his worst nightmare. He tried to remind himself that he was still in control, that this was all just in his mind. But the eerie whispers, the flickering lights, and the sound of footsteps behind him made it increasingly difficult to separate reality from the curse. He could hear the distorted voice of the creature, its words sinking into his mind like poison. "You cannot escape, Daniel. We are one now." The voice repeated over and over again, its deep, guttural growl resonating within his skull. Daniel's mind began to crack under the pressure. The lines between his memories and the horrors of the store began to blur. The flickering lights cast terrifying shadows that seemed to move of their own accord, twisting into figures that taunted him. He stumbled through the aisles, his breath short and ragged, when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. It was Trent's voice, but it sounded wrong, distorted, like an echo from the deepest part of his subconscious. "It's too late, Daniel. You're already part of it." Daniel spun around, but Trent wasn't there. There was only the eerie silence of the store and the presence that surrounded him. With every step, Daniel felt the walls closing in on him. The store was no longer just a building. It was a living, sentient entity that fed off his fear. The shelves now seemed to move on their own, reshaping the aisles, trapping him in a labyrinth that seemed to stretch on forever. It was as if the store itself was mocking him, always staying one step ahead. Desperation set in as Daniel tried to find the exit, but no matter how hard he looked, the door remained out of reach. The exit signs above the doors flickered and dimmed, as though the store was draining the very life from him. A soft rustling sound echoed from the back corner of the store. Daniel froze. The shadows seemed to shift and take on shape, forming into figures that he didn't recognize. twisted and distorted versions of people who had once visited the store. It was then that Daniel realized the terrifying truth. Those who entered this cursed place didn't just disappear. They became part of it, their souls forever bound to the store. His pulse quickened as he realized that he was already changing. The longer he stayed, the more he could feel himself becoming a part of the curse. His body felt heavy, as though something was weighing him down. His thoughts became foggy, his memory slipping away like sand through his fingers. Daniel found himself in the back corner of the store, facing a flickering TV screen that seemed to pull him in. The image on the screen was of Trent, but he didn't look like himself. He was pale, gaunt, his eyes hollow as though he had been consumed by the curse. "Daniel, listen to me." Trent's voice crackled through the screen, distorted and faint. "The curse, it's too strong. You can't win. You're trapped in its web now. It doesn't just take your body. It takes your soul." Daniel stumbled back, his mind reeling. He didn't want to believe it, but the fear that gripped him was undeniable. He could feel the entity closing in on him, its icy tendrils wrapping around his mind, slowly consuming his will. Trent's voice came again, this time sounding more desperate. "You have to destroy the store, Daniel. It's the only way to break the curse. You have to burn it all." Daniel's heart sank. Burn it all. The idea seemed impossible. How could he destroy the very place that had been trapping him for so long? But as he looked at the empty shelves, the stacked VHS tapes that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, the answer became clearer. Burn it. With those words ringing in his ears, Daniel turned and made his way toward the back of the store. The air grew heavier, more suffocating with every step, as though the very atmosphere of the store was fighting back. He felt the presence closing in on him from every direction, urging him to give in, to let go. But Daniel pushed forward. He had no choice. As Daniel moved deeper into the store, he began to experience terrifying hallucinations. The store seemed to have a life of its own. Whispers filled the air, and the aisles seemed to stretch into infinity. He could hear voices, screams, echoing from the shadows, the trapped souls of those who had come before him. The tapes on the shelves began to move on their own, sliding off the racks and falling to the floor. The distorted faces of the victims appeared on the covers of the tapes, their eyes wide with terror. They were watching him, judging him, as though they knew the fate that awaited him. He tried to block out the sounds, tried to ignore the whispers, but the entity's presence was overwhelming. It felt as though the store itself was feeding on his fear, growing stronger the more terrified he became. "You can't escape, Daniel." Daniel clenched his fists, his eyes filled with determination. The store was not just a building. It was a curse. It was an entity that thrived on fear, feeding on those who dared to enter. He found the back door to the store, a rusted metal exit that led to an alleyway. The door was heavy, but it opened with a groan. As Daniel stepped out, he felt the air shift. The curse was no longer suffocating him. He was outside, but the moment he stepped into the alley, he was immediately pulled back inside, as if the store was determined to keep him there forever. His vision blurred, and he could hear the entity's voice in his mind once again. "You cannot leave." As Daniel fought against the pull, the TV screen flickered on again, this time showing a face, his own face, but twisted and distorted, staring back at him with hollow eyes. The screen flashed and the lights went out completely. The last thing Daniel saw before the screen went black was a figure in the corner of the store, watching him. As Daniel stands in front of the flickering TV, the screen flashes one final warning: destroy it, or it will destroy you. The tension continues to rise as Daniel fights to maintain his sanity and confront the supernatural forces at work. The stakes have never been higher, and his escape may lead to something far worse than he ever imagined. Daniel's hands trembled as he stumbled through the dark aisles of the store, the cursed presence always on his heels, suffocating him with its psychic weight. He had no time left. Every minute he spent within the store made it harder to keep his grip on reality. The walls, once just cold concrete and shelves, now seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Each beat a reminder that the entity that controlled this place would never let him leave. The TV screen from earlier flashed in his mind, its distorted image of Trent urging him to burn everything. Destroy the store. But how? How could he destroy something that had been alive for centuries? How could he fight a presence that seemed to feed off fear, that twisted the very fabric of reality around him? Daniel's mind raced as he recalled the few fragments of truth he'd uncovered during his descent into madness. There had to be a way to end it. The tapes. The VHS tapes he'd seen scattered on the shelves, the strange symbols on the boxes. He remembered one tape in particular, the oldest one, the one that had a strange, unreadable symbol etched on its cover. He didn't know what it was, but something in him screamed that this was the key. If he could destroy the tape, perhaps the store's grip would weaken. He began searching frantically through the aisles, tearing apart shelves, each one collapsing with a sickening creak, as though the store itself was resisting him. He had to find it, the last vessel of the curse. As Daniel neared the farthest corner of the store, he could hear whispers again, this time louder, more urgent, as though the walls themselves were closing in on him. The shadows shifted, forming into familiar faces. But they weren't faces he recognized. They were faces of the lost souls, the cursed victims who had tried to escape this place before him. They reached out to him, their voices pleading, their eyes wide with terror, as though trapped in an endless loop of suffering. You can't destroy it, Daniel. The store will never let you leave. Daniel felt a sharp pain in his chest as the whispers crescendoed, the faces twisting into grotesque forms, smiling maliciously at him. He reached his hands up to his head, feeling his mind begin to unravel as their voices began to drown him. Out! Was this it? Was he going to be like them? Trapped forever? Consumed by the curse? Just as his sanity threatened to collapse under the weight of the horrors he was facing, his fingers brushed against something hard. A tape. His heart skipped, a beat. It was the one he had been searching for. The old VHS that had the strange symbol on it. He yanked it off the shelf, ignoring the searing pain that shot through his hands as if the tape itself was burning him. But it didn't matter. This was the key. With the cursed tape in hand, Daniel made his way back toward the back of the store, where the old VCR sat, a relic from another era, covered in dust but still operational. His heart raced. He shoved the tape into the VCR, praying for a miracle, praying that this would be the end of it. As the screen flickered to life, an image began to form. A black and white static slowly clearing to reveal an ancient ritual. The figures on screen were performing a twisted ceremony, one that seemed eerily similar to the events Daniel had been experiencing in the store. The figures were bound by chains, and the store, or what looked like it, loomed in the background, watching them as they chanted in a dead language. The figure leading the ceremony raised their hands to the sky, and then everything went dark. Suddenly, the screen flickered again, revealing a blood-red symbol that burned into the screen, sending a shockwave through the store. Daniel's body trembled as he felt the store reacting to the ritual. The walls trembled. The aisles twisted and writhed as though they were alive, their shadows reaching out for him. And then, it happened. The entity, the force that had haunted the store for so long, became aware of him. It knew he was trying to destroy it, and it would not let him. The ground shook violently, and the lights above flickered. The air grew colder, and the walls closed in, pressing against Daniel's chest, making it harder to breathe. Daniel staggered backward, his eyes wide with terror. He could feel the store around him, the curse tightening its grip on his mind. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, telling him he was too weak to fight it. He was too late. But Daniel couldn't give up. Not now. He had come too far. He ran toward the back door once again, his heart pounding in his chest. The door was so close. It was his only chance. But the entity wasn't about to let him escape that easily. As he reached the door, a tornado of shadows erupted around him, pulling at his body, trying to drag him back into the abyss. He felt his body becoming lighter, his will bending, as though the entity was trying to swallow him whole. But Daniel's desperation gave him strength. With one final, desperate effort, he threw the tape onto the floor, smashing it under his boot. The ground trembled beneath him as the store screamed in agony. The walls seemed to collapse, the shelves rattling and groaning in protest. But as Daniel looked at the door, he could see a sliver of light, a way out. With one last surge of energy, Daniel hurled himself through the door, feeling the curse tearing at him even as he crossed the threshold. As Daniel crashed through the door into the outside world, he collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. He looked back at the store, but it was gone. The building had disappeared, as though it had never been there. But just as he began to believe he was free, he felt a cold hand on his shoulder. A voice whispered in his ear, "It's not over." Daniel awoke in a cold sweat, his body trembling as his eyes snapped open. He was lying in his bed, the familiar surroundings of his apartment filling his vision. The shadows of the night outside cast a deep blue hue across the room. And for a moment, everything felt normal again, just a bad dream. But deep inside, he felt an unease that gnawed at him, a sense of wrongness he couldn't shake off. It wasn't a dream. It couldn't have been. The nightmarish images of the store, the eerie whispers, the suffocating presence, it all felt too real. The tape, the dark force, and the horrifying figures. None of it was something his mind could have invented. The pain, the terror, and the strange malevolent force that had clawed at his soul all felt like they had happened just moments ago. A voice echoed in his head, cold and familiar. "It's not over." The days that followed were a blur of confusion and paranoia. Daniel tried to return to his normal life, but something had shifted. The world felt different, distant, as though reality itself had been warped. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that the shadows around him were more than just darkness. Every flicker of light, every whispering voice in the wind, seemed to hold a message, a warning. He heard his name being called, from empty rooms. The walls would sometimes groan, as if something was trying to break through. At times, he would see a figure at the corner of his vision. Just a flash, just a glimpse. But he could never be sure. His friends noticed his erratic behavior. They noticed his nervous tics, the way his eyes darted around the room like he was searching for something invisible. They told him to go see a doctor, but Daniel knew something they didn't. Whatever happened in that store, it hadn't just affected his mind. He was marked. And now, the entity was coming for him, in ways more insidious than before. One night, unable to sleep, Daniel found himself wandering the streets of the city, trying to find some semblance of peace. His mind raced with fragmented memories of the store, the tapes, and the evil that had tainted everything it touched. As he walked, he stumbled upon an old, run-down video store, one he had never noticed before. Its windows were covered in grime, and a faded sign hung crookedly above the entrance. Curious, but also wary, Daniel entered. The stale air inside smelled of dust and decay, and rows upon rows of old VHS tapes lined the shelves. His heart skipped a beat when he noticed something. The same tapes from the cursed store, stacked in the back corner. He recognized the symbols, etched into their covers, the ones that haunted his every waking moment. This store had been here all along, and he hadn't noticed. He felt like he was being drawn to it, a moth to a flame. A voice echoed in the distance, a whisper, almost imperceptible. "The curse follows you, Daniel." It was the same voice from the store, the same dark force. It knew where he was. It knew he would come. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with an overwhelming sense of dread. The store owner, an old man with dark, sunken eyes, watched Daniel from behind the counter. He knew exactly what Daniel had come for. The truth. "You should have stayed away," the man rasped, his voice trembling with fear. "Once the curse attaches itself, it doesn't let go. You can't escape it. Not now. Not ever." Daniel's blood ran cold as the realization hit him. The store had been alive, feeding off the fear and suffering of those trapped inside. The entity had infected everything, not just the building, but the very fabric of reality around it. "It's not just the store," the man whispered, his eyes widening with horror. "It's the tapes, the symbols, the curse. They follow you. It doesn't matter where you go. It's coming for you." Daniel backed away, heart racing. He had no idea how much time he had left. Was he going mad? Or had he truly escaped the nightmare only to find himself deeper in the clutches of the curse? The lights in the store flickered, the air turned cold, and the shadows in the corners seemed to shift. The room began to pulse as if the very store was breathing, hungry, alive. In that moment, everything began to crumble. The walls warped as the entity's power erupted, surrounding Daniel with a dark, suffocating presence. The store itself twisted into a grotesque parody of its former self. The aisles stretching and collapsing, the shelves bleeding into the ground. The old man collapsed to the floor, clutching his chest as his eyes rolled back, his body racked with uncontrollable spasms. Daniel stumbled backward, his mind screaming at him to run, but his legs were frozen, rooted to the spot by an overwhelming force. Suddenly, from the darkness, figures began to emerge, ghostly apparitions of the souls, trapped within the curse, their faces twisted in agony, reaching for him. Their voices rose in unison, chanting in a language Daniel couldn't understand. But their meaning was clear. They were calling for his soul. And then, in the center of it all, the entity appeared. Its form, a shifting mass of shadows, eyes glowing, with malevolent intent, a grin too wide to be human. "You can't escape, Daniel." Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs as the world around him started to unravel. His breath came in ragged gasps as the cursed entity closed in, the walls closing around him like a tomb. With the entity reaching out for him, Daniel fought desperately against the darkness, but he knew one thing. The curse would never stop. It had already claimed him, body and soul. His escape was only temporary. As his hand touched the VHS tape that had caused it all, everything stopped. The room went silent. For a moment, it felt like the entity was gone. But then, a whisper reached his ear. "The curse never ends." The screen flickered and everything went dark.